Sorry that it's so loud. All right.
No worries.
How are you?
I'm well, thank you. It's hot.
Yes. Yes.
Where are you at?
I am in Mississippi.
Oh, okay.
So yeah,
We've got some Mississippi heat going on here right now.
where are you?
Toronto.
Oh, fun. Yeah, I've
Yeah.
been hearing about that because we have alternating temperatures between Antarctica and Satan's sweaty armpit.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we're living in Satan's sweaty armpit right now. It's with the humidity, it's 98.6 right now.
Oh gosh.
Yeah. Yeah. Feels like, right? It's only 88 when it doesn't without the humidity, but still.
Yeah, that's relative humidity. That's one of those things. It's kind of like telling somebody, I'm gonna hug you, but it feels like I'm slapping you in the face.
Mm-hmm. Well, because we're located in the middle of the 5 Great Lakes, the
Yeah.
humidity level here is insane. Always is.
Mm. Ew.
But yes, we have very, very humid, hot, humid summers, and where I'm at, relatively mild winters compared to places around us. So
Yeah, but I mean, you could do lots of hot yoga in summer.
yeah, I wouldn't even need to do anything special to be able to do that. I probably should.
Be like, yeah, I don't even have to heat up the house for this. I can
we,
just
we,
walk
we just we
outside.
just call it yoga.
That's right. Yeah. I just do it outside.
Yeah,
Oh.
yes. So
Oh.
yes.
Would you introduce yourself for my viewers?
Certainly. So my name is Troy Young. Hi, I am the author of a horror series called The Other. Ooh, The Other.
Oh.
And I don't know what's been going on, but this past week, well, since July 1,
Yeah.
sales for The Other have been through the roof. I'm like,
Really?
it's an anomaly. They're so good. So relatively speaking, I mean, relative to where I normally sell,
Okay.
I've already beaten certain months just in 5 days. So I'm like quite happy right now. And even though we haven't had this interview yet, I'm going to say it's all because of the interview. So
Okay. Yeah, we can go with that. I will take credit.
sure.
Oh, but so when did you start writing?
I started writing in 2018, but I didn't publish anything for the first time until April of 2019. So I'm still a relatively new writer. And the very first story in the other series was the second thing I published, called It Came from the Sea. And it's based off of an actual event from my childhood. I was about 6, and we were visiting Cape Breton Island. And I remember we're driving across the island to where my parents' family is from. And of course, there's only one radio station. So you got to listen to this one radio station. And every 15 minutes, they were coming on telling us about this sea monster that had been washed ashore on a beach. Of course, it wasn't a sea monster. They didn't know what it was. It was all decayed, but I kept envisioning, Godzilla coming over the next hill as we're driving through, and I'm trapped in the back of this car listening to this radio report about a sea monster. And obviously it stuck with me. But it turned out a couple days later that it was just a rather large basking shark that had been washed ashore. So they figured it out. It was mundane. It was no big deal. But I had just written a tiny short story that I called Shadow in the Night, and it was based on or inspired by Neil Gaiman's The Graveyard Book, and the character in that called Jack of All Trades. So I'd written this thing just to see what self-publishing was like, because I was in the process of trying to find a publisher for this other book that I had written. Still trying to find a publisher for that book. So I'm glad I decided to self-publish some stuff through that one little, it was like literally a 4-page short story that I threw up. And in the first 4 days, it So it moved 400 units. 99 cents, but I'd set it up for free. But I'm like, well, this self-publishing is easy. Why doesn't everybody do this, right? 400 units in 4 days? Why not? So I've never had anything sell like that ever again. But anyway, I suddenly thought I should write another short story.
Yeah.
And I'm out walking the dog, and suddenly this sea monster idea from my youth came into my head, and I went, well, what if it wasn't just a basking shark? What if it was something real that had been washed ashore? And I had been a fan of H.P. Lovecraft, although I hadn't read anything of his in years. And I thought, what if I added some Lovecraftian elements to it, right? Because I mean, a lot of his books deal with being along the shore there in Massachusetts and some of his made up towns. And I thought I could incorporate some of the nautical feel of Lovecraft into this story. So I made a passing reference to Miskatonic University, his made up university in Arkham, Massachusetts. And I thought, that now establishes this as a Lovecraft story, even though there's nothing particularly at that point specifically Lovecraftian in it.
Mhm.
And man, the feedback I got from this story was huge. People were saying, well, we want more. And I had never thought I'd be a horror writer. I mean, the first book that I wrote was a contemporary humorous coming of age story. Even as far as being a fan of horror fiction, I wouldn't have called myself a fan
Mhm.
other than my previous reading of Lovecraft. And I thought, oh, well, what the hell? This is what people want. And so I wrote the next story, which
Mhm.
was It Slumbers Beneath the Ice,
Yeah.
using the same character. And then people were saying, oh, I want to see the other characters. So I wrote I can't remember what it was. It Lives in the Woods was the next one with one of the other characters. And then, somebody in a review said, oh, the budding romance between the two characters. And I was like, romance? What? There's
Yeah.
no romance. So I kind of shoehorned something in there. You should be very big on, fan agency and giving them what they want. If they're telling
Mhm.
me that there's going to be romance and sparks between these two, fine, there is. But of
Yeah.
course, I had to do it in a very depressing way. So yeah, guy cheats on his wife and then dies. But whatever. I have been criticized just recently. I had a terrible review put up there, basically calling me a vicious monster who creates these characters that people begin to like, and then I callously throw them away for no reason. And that I'm just a terrible human and I should be slapped for the way I mistreat my own characters in, my horror story, which I found kind of funny. In fact, I've turned it into an ad because I'm like, well, this is the kind of
Yes,
stuff
because
people
this is
love.
one of those.
Yes.
Congratulations, you're
he,
officially an author.
he callously, viciously, mistreats his characters in a horse. I'm like, what do you think? It was all going to wrap up with a shiny bow and everybody was going to go have a
Right.
beer and talk about the good times? No, it's
Yeah.
horror.
Like, am I writing children's books?
Yeah, exactly. And besides, I mean, the first book is the first of a trilogy. Like there is more to the
Right.
story beyond what this person thought. And I don't know, maybe I reference what happens in that last story. And maybe one of the characters isn't quite gone yet. In fact, maybe she's the main star of the entire arc that still has
Right.
12 more stories to go. But good for you, bud, that I did that. So anyway, I shared it on a Facebook group I belong to with horror authors.
Yeah.
And they all had a good laugh about it. And I'm like, if we're not supposed to put our characters at peril,
Right.
then there's no suspense.
Exactly.
If you think that the main characters are all going to survive every challenge that they're up against, then it becomes rather dull. So this kind of shocking, no, you're all meaningless. We all suck and nobody cares about us and our lives can be snuffed out at any moment in time, I think is what makes horror horror. So
yeah. And plus, I mean, and I love how Joe Hill said, like, writing horror is one of those things that gives us this ability to show people that no matter how bad things get, there's still a way to kick the darkness until the light comes through.
Hmm.
Do you feel that horror, in some ways, even as dark as it is, has a way of doing that?
Well, everybody gets put into a position to have to confront these things,
Mhm,
right? Unless you turn it into total bloodbath,
mhm,
whether it's a slasher type story or just even more of a psychological thing. If everybody just constantly fails, then I think that becomes a problem in your story. There has to be a protagonist that gets through,
mhm.
right? Even 1980s slasher movies like Friday the 13th,
Yeah.
one of the kids always survives,
Yeah.
basically to tell everybody what happened and have everybody quickly forget about it and pretend that it didn't happen.
Right. So that they can
But
produce a sequel. Yeah.
exactly. But there still needs to be somebody that survives. You never see Jason just wipe out the entire camp and walk off whistling into the woods with his machete. He has to, somebody gets away.
Yeah.
So I think horror does show us some of the real terrible sides of humanity. And that to me is actually the best part of it. Like when I look at something like The Walking Dead,
Hmm.
and you read that, you realize after a while the zombies are not the problem.
Yeah.
People are the problem. The
Hmm.
zombies are just the setting.
Right.
At the beginning, they introduce you, and yes, they're the problem, but we quickly figure out how to overcome them. It's
Yeah.
humanity that is the real monster. And I think that's the case too. And I make that reference a couple times in the stories that, not everything bad that happens
Yeah.
is because of these entities. So there's more than enough bad shit that happens because of us.
Hmm.
And learning who is really the one behind things, I think, is key to it. So
Yeah.
now you read the book.
Hmm.
So what did you think? What was your takeaway?
Well,
I'll interview you now.
oh, this is a very strange change of dynamic, but I'm also going to be reviewing it. But
Mm.
I, as a fan of Lovecraft myself, I did very much like the fact that it was set that way. Um, and I was a little curious because I haven't really seen this done before. At the beginning of it, you set it up for everybody to have an established idea of what everyone's accents are. Is that?
That was just for the first book, right? So, or
Mhm.
the first story, but none of the main characters, like Joe Mills or Adele Kramer, they don't have that accent,
No.
right? Joe is from New Brunswick, and Adele is originally from Victoria Island in BC.
Mhm.
So it's only the people in the town Galoo Cove
Mhm.
that have that accent.
Yeah.
And if you've ever been to Cape Breton, literally you'll be walking around and some people in the town, their accent will be far stronger than other people in the same town.
Yeah.
So there's never going to be a consistency
Mhm.
amongst them. Some of them are going to be, I liken it to, you just drag out your vowels, right?
Yeah.
They talk like this, and it's kind of a lazy, slow way of talking.
It's
Um,
almost an almost a lazy Irish kind of sound to it, but not.
Kind of is, because Newfoundland too is, there's
Yeah.
the Newfoundland accent. Now I didn't attempt the Newfoundland accent here, but the majority of people that came to Newfoundland originally were from Ireland, so it is a kind of an Irish there. Now a lot of the people from the Cape Breton area are
Yeah.
actually of French descent,
Mhm.
but then of course Nova Scotia being New Scotland, there were some Scottish people there, so it's a
Yeah.
mix. And then there's a lot of Newfoundlanders that came over to Cape Breton, so it's kind of this its own weird regional mix. And I've got cousins that are down there, and it's funny. It is just such a weird accent to listen to,
Mhm.
because you can have the most intelligent person saying the most intelligent things,
Yeah.
and it still sounds kind of slow and lazy, like, because they drag it out, right? So, and then there's the idioms. I didn't get into a lot of the idioms that are said. I probably should have done a little bit more. I mean, apart from the odd Lord, thunder, and Jesus, why?
Right, yeah.
Yeah. So I did that obviously for the first book,
Mhm.
or the first story. It came from the sea, and I put the thing about it just for it came from the sea. But there was no way in hell I was going to keep that up through all the stories. It's just
Right.
too hard. And I'm going to be doing an audiobook version of this, and I'm like, oh man, I got to brush up on my Cape Breton accent, because if I'm going to deliver that,
Mhm.
because I'm going to do it myself, but I'll bring out the actor training in my background.
Okay.
But yeah, so that was why I added that little
Mhm.
thing on the Cape Breton dialect, just so people wouldn't be confused in the very first story, and then quickly got them the hell out of Cape Breton, because I wanted A, to showcase more of the country,
Mhm.
and B, I just didn't want to have to write that accent for every story.
Yeah.
So
Well, because I was kind of wondering, because with the way that you set it up, me being the analytical overthinker that I am, was wondering if possibly it was foreshadowing to you doing some kind of return and
well, they do kind of
setting it
return,
up
do
to
they
where
not?
suddenly they don't have their accents and making us all wonder if it was a body snatching situation.
Oh yeah, but everybody from the town have all left, right? They've all been scattered to the winds. The government basically came in and bought the town and said, "Get the hell out." You got what, I think it was like 24 hours they were given
Mhm.
to, or 48 hours to get out of town.
Yeah.
And when they do return to that town in the sixth story, which is it ends where it began, which haha, it doesn't really end there because there's 12 more stories to go, but it ends for those characters where it began. They're all gone, right? So everybody that's left there now at the town are outsiders, and none of them have that accent. It also depends too, right? Like the smaller the town, I find the deeper the accent is down there. And like I said, I've got family members, some of whom are really, really strong accents, and others that aren't. And I've got family members that grew up there that moved away and still retained that heavy, strong accent. I got an
Yeah.
aunt and uncle in Oshawa outside of Toronto here. But then there's my parents, and they don't have an accent at all.
Oh.
And I find what I need to do is go back there this summer,
Oh, bless
which
me.
I'm planning on it,
Mhm.
because literally as soon as I crossed the border into Nova Scotia, whether I was even flying once, and we crossed into Nova Scotia airspace, and I
Yeah.
started to talk like that, and my friends I was with were like, "What are you saying? Why are you talking like that?" And I don't know. I can't do it as well here, but as soon as I get down there, and as soon as I hear it,
Mhm.
then that's all I sound like.
Yeah.
I drop right into it, and like I'm butchering it now, but I'll be talking like a native after a couple of days down there. So
Doesn't take long to slip
no,
back in.
I fall right back into it very, very quickly. So, which is weird because I never grew up there. I spent a lot of time there as a kid, but I didn't grow up there.
Mm.
So
Makes me wonder if it just means you're naturally inclined to have a good ear for accents. So if you spend enough time around anybody who's got a thick enough accent,
I would
like,
love to say that my acting is that good, that I can fall into accents that well. I think it's just that one. I think it is that, even though I don't hear my parents having it, they probably do.
ah,
And aunts and uncles that I grew up around, I probably heard enough of it, even
mm-hmm.
though I wasn't there, that I picked up on it, and it got kind of imprinted on me. Um, so although I say I sound just like them, I go down there and they go, "No, you're from Ontario. We know that. You're not fooling anybody." So yeah.
Yeah. So now I noticed that you write them in more sort of episodic anthology type of.
Yes. Well, that was it originally. I mean, Lovecraft, all his were short stories too, right?
Mhm.
I mean, the longest one that he wrote was At the Mountains of Madness, and I think that's only like 40 or 50,000. That's the closest thing he has to a novel.
Yeah.
When I wrote the first one, it was supposed to be a standalone, and it was just something to do to test out this. And then I wrote the second one again. It's a little bit longer. It's the first one I think is about 10 or 11,000 words, and the second one is 18,000. And by the time I got to the fourth book, that's when I knew I was going to do it as a bigger story.
Hmm.
So I start to lay down some of the ideas that the story is going to manifest in the fourth one. And then the fifth and the sixth, when I wrote those, I was clearly into this is going to be something bigger.
Yeah.
This is going to be a 3-book, 6 stories in each book
Yeah.
to get us to the end. And by the time I started to write the fifth one,
Hmm.
I knew what the ultimate end was going to be. So the second and the third batch of stories were much easier
Yeah.
because I knew exactly where I was going with them and I knew what I had to add in. So that whole episodic, they are meant to be read in order.
Hmm.
Some of them can be enjoyed completely on their own. But because I'll make reference to something that happened in the previous story, originally when I published those, I had included kind of this is where we are now, and made, gave some exposition to bring the reader up
Yeah.
in case they hadn't read the other ones. But then when I compiled it into the one book, I edited all that out. And in
Yeah.
fact, my editing has improved a bit. And I go back now and I read some of the stuff in the first book, and I cringe and go, ooh, I need to fix that. So,
I think we all do that.
yeah, well, I'm going to be releasing an omnibus of all 3 in December. So the third book comes out in September. So by December, I'll do an omnibus of all 3 of them as one. I am going to go back and re-edit the stories, at least in the first 2 books, probably not the third one because I'll have done that already. Just to clean some things up. Like I noticed there's a couple of things, even in the rules I gave with the Cape Breton writing,
Yeah.
where if I go back and I look at the rating, I'm like, well, I broke my own rule.
Hmm.
It needed to be worded that way. So I need to clean up that language a bit. The stories themselves won't change dramatically. It'll be
Yeah.
just maybe some wording here, some terminology there, some of this, that. But I think the stories as they stand are pretty damn solid. Even if there are certain parts, especially in the earlier ones, that could benefit from one more pass at least by me now that I've been writing so much. So
Yeah. But do you think that because I know some of us, especially me, even for the last 16 years, I've been a ghostwriter, and sometimes I will go into a bookstore and pick up something that has been published under someone else's name and look at it, and it's mine, and want to nitpick at it. Do you feel like now you thinking about your previous work, art is never truly completed, it's just abandoned?
well, yeah, and I think anybody can go back and take a new look. You get a new lens, or you knew what you wanted to say, but you were struggling with it at the time, and then clarity comes to you months later, and you're like, ah, I could have put it that way. I
Mhm.
mean, I'm reading this guy's book right now, and
Yeah.
this is the extended version, and I'm like, if Stephen King can go back and add stuff to The Stand, which was already a huge book when it was
Yes.
first published in 1990.
Yeah.
If he can go back and change things and republish something, then God damn it, so can I.
Right.
Um, I really enjoyed his book on writing.
Yes.
Any author out there should get that
Yeah.
and read it over. Um, although he does talk about, religiously slaying adverbs in your work, and adverbs are sloppy.
No dandelions in the yard. No.
And I'm reading this thing and I'm like, dude, in like 3 sentences, there's like 7 adverbs. So you
Yeah.
didn't slay them yourself. So don't tell me I have to. I've been sitting here writing in circles to try not to use an adverb because Stephen King said so, and he doesn't even follow his own advice. But it, yeah, no, I really liked his book on that. And I'm a hit or miss Stephen King fan.
Mhm,
Like my favorite of his is Carrie because it's short and it's concise and it's to the point.
mhm.
And then he became Stephen King, and people
Right. Yeah.
couldn't tell him what to keep in and what not to put in.
Yeah.
So suddenly, um, they become much larger than they need to be in some cases. Like I
Yeah.
remember reading The Shining and thinking, we get it. This guy was an ass and mistreated a kid at
Yeah.
the school he taught at, and he was an alcoholic. Do I need to be reminded every 2 chapters? I mean, I know he's dragging out the story, and every time he tells it, we get a little bit more. And
Hmm.
I'm like, but by the time you get to the payoff for that one, we've already seen it coming a mile away.
Yeah.
We get it. He's an ass. And anyway, that book probably could have been 50 pages shorter if we just edited out the repetition of that. But
Yeah.
you know what?
I mean, but
Everybody's fine. And some people love that, right? Like some
yeah.
people picking up the stand will look at that and go, I'm glad he added more stuff because I just want more. And
Yeah.
some people love Robert Jordan and his Eye of the World and all that stuff. I tried
Mhm.
to read it. He spent 4 pages talking about crossing a river, and I'm like, oh my God, I can't do it. I
Yeah.
can't do it. I need, yeah. But I'll read Tolkien, so I don't. You
Yeah.
get me in the. I got to be in the right state of mind, I guess, for
Yeah.
your wordy bloat in a book. But
Right. I mean, because I guess it's one of those things. It's kind of like knowing the difference between brownies and cake,
mhm,
you know? So you go into it expecting one thing, but if
mhm.
it the texture is completely off, you're like, this is not what I was looking for. So I guess if you're approaching epic fantasy, which is
I know, and everybody has to do big fantasy, right? I've got a fantasy book that I wrote. It's about 92,000 words, so it's big, but not big. It's not massive big. And I know some people love this really detailed world building, and I didn't do that, right? Like I'm not running a Dungeons and Dragons campaign where I have to have everything figured out, right?
right.
Um, so I'll tease you what you need to know.
Mhm.
And sometimes I don't even know what's going to be part of
Yeah.
this world until I need it to be there, and suddenly there it is.
You're like,
Uh,
here.
and then maybe I'll go back a couple, chapters earlier and add something that makes it all make sense. But I
Yeah.
don't think you need to sit there and literally spend 150 pages just building the background of what your world is.
Yeah.
But some people love that, right? So there's no one right way to write, and there's
No.
no one right way to read, and everybody will love everything differently. Like, I mean, I love Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and it's 46,000 words. It's tiny, right?
Yeah.
Um, and I would much rather read something like that was concise and
Mhm.
funny and great and make me go, God, I want more, than I'm looking at a book and I've already devoted a ton of time to this book and I'm looking and there's still 200 pages to go and I'm like, just get to the end already, right? Like,
Yeah.
so everybody's different. Anyway,
Yeah. But I mean, do you feel like if the writing is engaging enough that no matter how long the book is, it's too short anyway?
well, that's the mark of a good writer, is always leave the person wanting more. So I can do that by offering them just something short
Hmm.
or just through the quality of my writing.
Yeah.
If my writing is of a sufficient quality and I've created characters and situations that people are really enjoying,
Hmm.
whether they get to the end of it, whether it's 20,000 words or 300,000 words, you can leave them wanting the same. or wanting more. So I think that's just more a quality of your story. But then again, there are some stories that you've told it, it's done.
Yeah.
There's nothing more to do, right? Like I'll mention Tolkien again, Lord of the Rings. I actually kind of really liked what Peter Jackson did, because in his movies he kept the best stuff and took
Yes.
out a lot of the stuff. I mean, sure, there will be people that go, where's the Tom Bombadil scene? Whatever.
Right. Yeah.
That's great. For every Tom Bombadil scene that
Mhm.
we didn't get, we
Yeah.
also didn't have to sit through Sharky and the Scourging of the Shire, which,
Right.
quite frankly, watching Christopher Lee as some sort of two-bit hood kicking
Right.
the crap out of hobbits just would not have translated
No.
well
No.
the big
not-
screen. So I'm glad Sharky didn't make an appearance.
No.
Wormtail stabbing him and pushing him off the tower. Great, done.
Yes.
He's over. And sometimes that's it. Sometimes that is all you need to do. The story, his part of the story is told. We don't need to belabor it and keep going on. So
Right.
there are times that, yes, the story is done. And there are times that people will want more. And it's like, I'm sorry, you're not getting any more, because
Yeah.
it's done. It's told. Um, I mean, it maybe becomes crass commercialism
Mhm.
for me to go, well, shit, they really like those stories. I better keep this character alive and keep writing and doing things with this character that I no
Mhm.
longer expected, because I know they'll buy it.
Yeah.
And that there's nothing wrong with that, I guess, if you've got the fans that want that. But I wish I had that many fans that love my stuff that just kept asking me to write more of the same. So.
Well, I mean, maybe that'll.
Do you know what? I do have some super fans that engage with me quite a bit, who love my stuff, and I'm very happy to have them engaging with me and doing that. And in fact, because of some of the things they've said, I am writing more in this genre. I'm going actually back and starting a book called The Other Histories. So stories that I had told
Yeah.
in the first 3 books, we're now going back and getting a story set back in time that tells you the backstory of what you read about later. Like in It Lurks in the Basement,
Mhm.
there's something in that basement, and there's something to do with this house that
Mhm.
it's in. You're going to find out about the history of that strange family that owns that house, and why that house was built in the first place, and how that thing got into the basement.
Mhm.
So that's going to be part of The Other Histories.
Yeah.
So yeah, the one I'm writing now is drawing on a story from the 3rd book called The Curse of the Windsor Witch. So you haven't read that one yet, so I won't belabor that one too much. But yeah, I'm having a lot of fun writing that one right now.
So, would you say that writing in such episodic short stories has given you more, I don't know, more of a motivation because of how quickly you're able to finish things?
Well, so the way I did it originally, right? I published the first story, and then I published the second story. So then I got into a habit of publishing individual short stories. And sometimes I would publish 2 of them back to back, like
Mhm.
within a matter of weeks. And then a month or 2 would go by before I did the next one.
Yeah.
What these allow me to do, because they're on the shorter side, is act as a palate cleanser. Because
Mhm.
I mean, I have written full novels too. I've got 2 novels in a sci-fi series out called The Seeker of Solace and The Denial of Deliverance.
Yeah.
And that's about a guy who is running in a gang. It's basically a space western.
Yeah.
Running in a gang, they do a bank job. He gets left behind. They're about to hang him in this small town in the middle of nowhere, and a
Mhm.
frontier marshal shows up and basically says, you can either stay on those gallows and die and meet your fate right now, or you can hunt down your gang members for me. And of course he chooses to hunt down the gang members. So I wrote that, and then I wrote the follow-up story, and there's 2 more novels in that series to come. But I find these shorter stories, they do kind of in between writing something like that,
Yeah.
allow me to recharge, refocus. And because they're shorter, I can develop a um, fully contained story without having to drag it out and add extraneous stuff.
Mhm.
At first, I thought I couldn't write a short story, and now I find that they're almost easier to write than the novels, simply because of the nature of the structure is quite different. Um, although that Seeker of Solace novel I wrote,
Mhm.
I wrote that in 12 days. I wrote that faster than some of these short stories. Some of these short stories might take a month or more
Yeah.
to get it right. So it's not even a matter of how many words or time. When you're motivated to do something, like I literally churned out in that 12-day period 5,000 words a day
Yeah.
on that novel.
Yeah.
Whereas, I might do 1,000 words a day on a 20,000 word short story
Mhm.
or novelette or
Novella.
novella, depending on what. There's a hierarchy of how many words you've got and what you're supposed to
Right.
call it. But
Yeah. Glorious, tedious semantics and nitpicking.
yeah, because if I don't mention the nitpicking and get it right, somebody will, leave a comment
Somebody will
and
call
say,
you out
well,
on
he's
it.
talking about writing novellas when it's really a novelette. So short stories, well, is it under 7,500 words? No, it's not a short story. Whatever.
Be like, okay, yeah, sure. Be like, no, you know what?
Did you read it? Did you like it? Shut up. Go away.
Exactly. Exactly. Did I tell a damn good story?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The one thing though with writing it as episodic short stories was, man, I had to come up with 18 separate ideas
Yeah.
that could stand on their own,
Mm-hmm.
as well as fit into a larger story.
Yeah.
And I only recently read Lovecraft Country, and I think Matt Ruff did an excellent job. In fact, I wish I'd read that before I wrote any of mine, because that's exactly what it's laid out. You would have thought that I had read it and I was trying to duplicate it,
Mm-hmm.
because his were, I think there's 6 or 7 episodic stories
Mm-hmm.
that on their own do stand on their own,
Yeah.
but are linked and should be read in order, just like mine. Now, of course, I don't deal with all the racism angle that his does.
Right. Yeah.
His horror elements are basically, it's kind of like the zombies in Walking Dead. They're not the real issue,
Right. Yeah.
right? It's the whole commentary on racism in America in 1950 that was the big part of that book,
Yeah.
with sci-fi horror elements to it. But I really like what he did with that, and he builds suspense in a good way. And I think my last 2 stories I wrote, I kind of may have tried to emulate a little bit of what he had accomplished,
Mm-hmm.
without, outright copying him. But yeah, so I wish I'd read that earlier. But that is hard then, to come up with 18 standalone ideas that all fit with the theme and
Yeah.
all allow you to keep moving the main story arc along.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've had people tell me that my stories are very reminiscent of X-Files. Now, of course, I know what X-Files is. I never watched X-Files. I still have not to this day watched a single episode of X-Files. I probably should, because it might be able to mine it for some ideas.
Yeah.
Or I've also been told it's like Delta Green, which is an offshoot of the Call of Cthulhu game. And
Yeah.
again, I've never seen any Delta Green stuff, but I know what it is now
Mhm.
after having written it, because
Yeah.
they are part of a secret government organization that investigates this
Right.
stuff
Yeah.
that is happening out there.
Mhm.
So they are very reminiscent of the two. But in reality, if you wanted to say, what was it that truly inspired me to write all this?
Yeah.
I don't think if I hadn't watched Stranger Things,
Yeah.
I wouldn't have been in the mindset to do it. I had just finished watching the first season when I started to write this stuff.
Mhm.
So I wasn't drawing directly on it, but I think having just seen that recently is what put the thought into my head that I could write stuff like this, because clearly there's a market and a desire for it. And that first season, especially, well, all the seasons actually, but the first
Yeah.
one especially is very Lovecraftian,
Mhm.
right? The upside down and the creature, the Demogorgon there. And
Yeah.
yeah, so I think if not for Stranger Things, I would never have been put into the mindset to put pen to paper in the first case. And honestly, if you had said, Troy, okay, you're going to be an author someday, I would have been, that's cool.
Yeah.
Troy, you're gonna be a horror author someday.
Huh?
Horror author? What? What are you talking about? Horror? People actually read that? Horror? What?
Yeah.
But yeah, so and now it's clearly my niche, and it's clearly what people love, and they
Yeah.
read my other stuff. My other stuff is gets great reviews too, but nothing like the horror stories do. So I guess I'm now a horror author.
Yeah. It comes for all of us at one time or another.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Like I tend to read more fantasy than anything,
mhm.
um, which is why I find it strange that I'm doing this. But
Yeah. Do you find that it's strange that you're doing this because it's something that your inner storyteller sort of does independent of your natural reader's tastes?
I think I tell better horror stories than I tell other stories, to be honest. Same thing even with the sci-fi, right? Like I wrote that one, the sci-fi Western. That one I can clearly say is because I watched The Mandalorian
Mm.
and put me into the mindset of doing that. But if I were to say that what inspiration is what did I draw on for that series? The video game Red Dead Redemption.
Yeah.
John Marston's story, basically the same thing. He's got to go and hunt down members of his gang, under much different circumstances, though, than
That's
the one
obvious.
I'm doing. So yeah, but again, I'm not a huge Western fan. I mean, I love Star Wars, so that makes the tie there.
Yeah.
But I don't read a lot of sci-fi.
Mhm.
Again, I read fantasy, and I did write a fantasy book. And my fantasy book, as I said, gets away from the big overdone world building. It's kind of tongue in cheek because I find a lot of fantasy takes itself way too seriously.
Yeah.
Right. Everybody is very serious. And, as much as I love George R.R. Martin and things like that, I didn't want a fantasy story where, oh, I'm the tortured orphan with a destiny, or I am the world's greatest sword wielder, or I'm the king of this, or I am the lost heir to that. No, these are just really for people who, quite frankly, you wouldn't trust to look after your cat for a
Right.
weekend if you were going away, and it's their job to save the world. Simply because A, nobody else knows what's going on, and B, if they don't, they're going to die anyway. So I can sit around and let these people hunt me down, or we can just go and because they think we know something and we don't.
Right.
And one guy thinks he's going to be a great warrior. He doesn't even know how to wield a sword properly. And one guy, yeah, he's a magic wielder. He just got out of the academy, but he's also kind of crippled, and so being on the road is tough on him. There's an older guy who's a priest, and and there's only one person who's capable amongst a bunch of them, and she lies through her teeth, and they don't know who she is really when it comes down to it, and whether she's truly on their side or not. And so it was interesting. It's called The Stone of Death.
Yeah.
If anybody's interested. Again, it's got good reviews,
Mm-hmm.
just like The Seeker of Solace and the Denial of Deliverance. Although it's a very crowded marketplace, so it's hard to connect them
Mm-hmm.
to readers. I
Yeah.
had a much easier time doing it with the horror. It's a smaller niche market.
Yeah.
So maybe someday my fantasy fans and sales or sci-fi fans and sales will equal my horror ones. But
Yeah.
for the time being, it's kind of hard to go back and write the second book of that fantasy series, because it's supposed to be 4 books.
Yeah.
Each book told from the perception of one of the 4 main characters. So it switches every book, but it's
Mm-hmm.
hard for me to go and say, I'm going to spend 6 months working on this and not sell anything else and not do anything else when my horror numbers are going through the roof,
Yeah.
and I'll sell 3 fantasy novels in a month. Like, it's not a good use of my time,
Yeah.
but I do want to finish that story eventually. So
Yeah.
hopefully
Yeah.
people will connect.
Yeah. Well, I mean, do you think that being able to juggle both is
Well, of
helpful
course,
to you as a writer?
they always suggest you should find a niche market and a genre and stick with it and not genre hop. But I'm like, okay, maybe that's the smart business move.
Uh-huh.
But as a creative outlet, I need to
Yeah.
be able to write in the different ones. As I said, the first thing I wrote, first novel I actually finished, was a contemporary humorous coming of age about a guy living in a trailer park in Florida,
Yeah.
out of job with his mom, who's also out of work, and she's going blind, and she sits around and smokes her medical marijuana all day, and he just hangs out, and the crazy group of friends that he has. And ultimately, he's a guy with a destiny, and he knows he's got a destiny, and he assumes he's got great things that are going to happen. He just doesn't know how to do it, what they are, and he's kind of lazy, actually, so he's not out there trying. And then it's just about his crazy hijinks.
Yeah.
I mean, I did get it to a VP of one of the major publishing houses. She loved it. Said, boy, this kid can write. Although I was 48 at the time, so not really a kid. Said it was a character for the ages, but still declined to publish it. So I'm like, well, whatever. And
Why?
it's, you know what? It's again, it's a business, and they look at, what can I easily sell? If you're a
Yeah.
major publisher and you go, I have X number of slots,
Mm-hmm.
right? This is why you'll see the same names over and over again, because you're a proven commodity.
Yeah.
And if I'm looking for the next new thing, it's like, what proven commodity are you emulating?
Yeah.
So I can market it that you're like this person, so
Do
that
you
fans of
the
that person will
metadata?
read you, right? It's nobody is going to take a risk on something brand new that doesn't fit in a nice, easy category.
Mhm.
Because again, if I'm only publishing 30 titles in a year, I'm
Yeah.
going with the 30 titles I know are going to sell.
Yeah.
So I guess what I need to do is find a smaller publishing house for that one
Mhm.
that's willing to take it. But then again, agents are just as bad.
Yeah. They
Agents
are.
only want
If
something
not
that
worse.
they know they're going to, or worse. Yeah.
Yeah.
That they can just flip over and go, well, I'll send out, 3 inquiries to publishers, and I know one of them's going to hit, right? I don't, if I got to spend 6 months flogging your book,
Yeah.
well, that's a waste of my time, right?
Mhm.
So again, they're looking at the same thing. I
Yeah.
want the next, Harry Potter.
Yeah.
And even Harry Potter wasn't Harry Potter at one point,
No.
right?
Right.
But how many poorly written young adult novels came out simply because you're the right niche at the right time in the right
Right.
market. Doesn't matter if you're
Case in
good.
point, Twilight. I mean, that was a heap of garbage, which is being recycled, by the way.
See, I've never read or seen Twilight, although I might read it to my daughter. But I'm reading to her right now the
Careful, it'll
Divergent
give her
series.
nightmares, not because of the content, but the quality.
Well, we're reading Divergent right now.
Oh, okay.
And oh my God. I think some people write in, and I shouldn't be criticizing too many authors, but you know what? She sold 32 million copies, so whatever. She's right for criticism. But I think some authors write young adult
Mhm.
simply because they're not very good authors.
Yes.
And they're counting on a less sophisticated target audience
Yeah.
that'll buy their crap.
Uh-huh.
And because I found Divergent is not a good book. Well, you're sitting there and you're going, well, this makes no sense. How
Right.
is this set up?
Like,
How does this
yeah.
system work? Like, okay,
Like, I thought you're supposed to show your readers things, but apparently you don't completely know your whole concept. So,
well, okay, the city is divided into 5 factions, okay, that are based around one particular character trait, okay, because that's normal.
right.
But then they all go to the same high school together.
Uh-huh.
So wait, we've divided the city up and we live in our own little enclaves, all based around just our way of life, yet you see them at school. Where is this school? Is there like a central hub that everybody exists in?
Yeah.
Because you never mention that. You just talk about, oh, I saw the Dauntless kids at school. Why? Why do the Abnegations send their kids to a school where they're Dauntless kids? This makes no sense.
Yeah. No.
This is in the first 30 pages of the book, and I'm already like, this does not work. Anyway, and then it just went downhill from there. And I'm like, wow. Okay. So anyway, yeah, like I think maybe what I should do is write a young adult novel, because apparently they don't have to be good to get published.
Yeah, see there. Yeah.
Maybe that's my next thing.
It would be, well, I mean, hey, I mean, you gotta find a way to, like, I don't know, cleanse your system of the rubbish at some point, because you spend all this time writing good stuff.
And maybe I've already written a garbage YA novel under a pen name and nobody knows. That's fine. If I do write one, it'll be under a pen name, believe me. So
Yeah.
especially now. I have to.
Like, it could be Paige Turner.
There you go. There you go.
And nobody would.
I think there's an adult actress that goes by that name, Paige Turner. I think. I don't know. So it may have already been done.
Possibly. Yeah. But I don't know if anybody would actually pick up on the pun with it being published in YA. It would probably take them a minute.
Possibly.
To be like, hey, you're messing with me.
Yes. Yes.
Oh, so would you say that you like being in indie publishing because it allows you more freedom than traditional and having to deal with all the metadata?
Yes and no, but if I actually managed to get an agent and a publisher, I would love that even more.
Yeah.
There are certain, yes, there are definitely certain freedoms for being an indie publisher.
Mm-hmm.
There are definitely some positive trade-offs for being traditionally published, especially if I was in one of those big 5, right? Yeah. I will put up with your restrictions. You want me to change this? Are you footing the bill to print this damn thing and get it out to everybody and market the hell out of it? Yeah, done. You gonna set me up on book tours to travel around the Publix or the whatever, so I can talk to people about my writing? Hell yeah, whatever. Let's do it. Let's make this happen. And I'm gonna get paid millions of dollars to do it. Sure. You know what? I'll put up with a lot in that case. So yeah, there is definitely, I think if you were to be dealing with just a small press
Mhm.
that was doing your traditional publishing and you were still only selling, 10,000 copies of your book at that level, then I think, you know what, I might as well stay completely on my own where I've got the freedom to do that. But
Yeah.
I mean, it's difficult when you're wearing all the different hats
Mhm.
as an indie publisher. It's tricky. I would like to get into a solid partnership where I have got, an agent or an editor or a publisher who has just as much to gain from my
Mhm.
success as I do, because I don't mind sharing my success with others,
Yeah.
provided they're going to be doing some of these things to free me to concentrate on writing.
Yeah.
Like I could do a heck of a lot more, I think,
Mhm.
than I currently do even.
Yeah.
And I published 6 books last year. I could do even more
Mhm.
with the proper support network.
Yeah.
And I'm not quite there yet. Again, I've only been publishing for 2 years. So, maybe that network will grow.
Yeah.
But and I know there are definitely indie publishers out there who have managed to build their own network and stay independent
Mhm.
and are doing this and making very good incomes at it.
Yeah.
But I think for me, the true test of whether or not I've made it as an author will be the day I'm walking through an airport and one of those airport newsstands has my book sitting on a shelf. Because I figure if you make it into those
Yeah.
stores with their limited number of titles, you've made it,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
So that's my goal. I want to be found in an airport bookstore.
Nice.
And you're not going to do that as an indie author. So
But maybe you can though, because there's such a thing as Ingram Spark.
I know in the first book, the one that I gave you, is available through Ingram Spark. I didn't put the second one through, and I haven't put the third one through simply because I'm like, I don't want to pay you the $49 setup fee. That seems kind of raunchy to me. But I will be eventually. I will be publishing all. I don't know whether I'll publish the individual ones or whether when I finally get the omnibus together, I'll just put it through.
Mhm.
Because I figure there's probably more of a demand at a bookstore for that bigger book
Mhm.
than the 3 individual ones. I mean, I've sold some through Ingram Spark, but I don't think I've sold enough through Ingram Spark even for them to kick in my first royalty check yet. Right.
Yeah.
So pretty much the majority of my sales are Amazon. The fantasy book, The Stone of Death, is also available wide.
Mhm.
I published that through Draft Digital, so it's available as an ebook everywhere. And I did set it up directly at Barnes and Noble and places like that, so you can get printed copies there. But again, the majority of its sales comes from Amazon. It's so tough. Amazon, 70% of the game is at Amazon. Right.
Yeah.
And I know there are authors that swear by going wide, and I've got my foot in it. I've tried it, and I can understand if you're being successful
Mhm.
doing it that way, great. For others, I know they swear by Amazon because, hey, Kindle Unlimited.
Yeah.
And right now, if I were to pull that out of Kindle Unlimited to make it wide available, I would never make up the money I've lost for not being in Kindle Unlimited.
Yeah.
And even the advertising I do, whether it's Amazon advertising or Facebook advertising, what ultimately ends up making that advertising successful is the incremental bit that Kindle Unlimited brings to the table. So for now, I'm pretty much exclusive there.
Mhm.
If those KU read numbers ever drop off, then I'll
Yeah.
say, we'll go wide with this thing
Yeah.
and see where it takes us. And I do get the odd person that will contact me after seeing the ad and they're very interested in the book and they're going, can I get it anywhere but Amazon?
Mhm.
And I have to say no, because there are some people that just don't want to shell out money to Jeff Bezos to send him
Right.
to
Yeah.
wherever, send him to space. Like, send him to space. That's what I should do. Help me send Jeff Bezos to space. Buy my book. That might be a good ad. I'm going to try that.
There you go. Hey.
And sign the petition to tell him to stay there once he's up.
Yes.
Anyway, actually, I have no problem with Amazon. I mean, they revolutionized the self-publishing industry, and
Yeah.
they made it for a lot of authors an opportunity to get out there,
Yeah.
and inspire them. And I'm, some of the other channels that exist
Mhm.
that the wide people take advantage of probably only exist because of Amazon. They
Mhm.
created them in response to an alternative to Amazon, which they may not have done
Yeah.
on their own without it. So even the people that are wide and hate Amazon, well, even the wide people that dislike Amazon still acknowledge that 70% of their sales probably come through Amazon.
Right. Yeah.
So, and I know there are people that do have issues with them as a publisher, but
Mhm.
honestly, I've never seen that. And anytime I've had an issue, they've taken care of it almost immediately. So I've had nothing but good customer service from them, and they sell the majority of my books, so I'm not gonna get mad at them.
Right. Yeah. No. No. As long as they are helping you sell copy,
Exactly.
that is all that matters.
Exactly.
So, what would you say is your most enjoyable experience as a storyteller?
I really enjoy when people tell me my work resonated with them.
Mhm.
Right? I mean, let's face it, I'm not going to be giving up my day job anytime soon. Not from my author money, not yet. Would I
Right.
like to get to that point? Sure, who wouldn't? But I also have a very lucrative day job, so I mean, I have to make a lot of money before I give it up. But so the money side of things, well, that's fun too to watch.
Mhm.
Because it's not at a level yet for me to be doing this as my full career,
Mhm.
it doesn't come anywhere near the sheer joy when somebody sends me a message through my business email or my business account to say, wow, I really, really enjoyed that.
Mhm.
Or you touched me on this, or I wish I could do what you do. And to have that feedback. And I've developed connections with some people
Mhm.
who they've read all my stuff.
Yeah.
And, if I'm having a bad day and I'll share a negative, nasty review, they're the first ones that are there to say, oh man, your stuff is great. Don't listen to this person. Da, 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 da. So that's neat.
Yeah.
People that I don't know, that there's no reason for them to need to reach out to me other than I created something that meant enough to them that they took the time to do that.
Mhm.
And to me, that's been far and away the most fulfilling and most interesting part of this author journey. Something I never suspected, never knew. Like, if I ever do get to the point where I'm doing book tours
Yeah.
and there's a line of people that want my signature on my book, I will sit there all day long until my hands cramp up. Because if you're willing to line up and wait that long just
Yeah.
to have that brief interaction with me, namaste. Like, wow,
Yes.
like that will just be the most thrilling thing ever, I think.
Mhm.
And more than any financial side to the success, although that would be great too.
Yeah.
It'll be that
Mhm.
is the most meaningful.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Because that's what we're here to do. That's why we do any of this at all, is because we're transporting people to places and teaching them things they wouldn't know without our perspective.
I mean, if I sold 1,000,000 copies of a book and people were like, yeah, it's all right. Well, like who am I? Who am I kidding? Of course, I'd love to sell 1,000,000 copies of my book. And if it was only okay, but they paid me money, whatever, that's fine.
Right. Yeah.
But I think on a personal level,
Mhm.
as long as money is no object,
Yeah.
definitely I would rather know that I had a smaller group of dedicated fans who really enjoyed my stuff
Yeah.
than a larger number of people that were like, yeah, it's okay.
Right. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
So like, it's been an interesting thing, a journey. I had no idea I was ever going to be an author. I remember years ago, I'm a university professor on top of everything else I do. And I was talking to my students about, getting to a point in your life where you're looking at a second career. Like you've done everything you needed to do. You've established yourself. You've got enough money. Now you can go and do something where money is not an object, right? And you can look to somebody like Jimmy Carter out there building homes for Habitat for Humanity. Like, what is it that you would go and do?
Right.
And I had students standing up, and one wanted to be a rapper, so I let them rap before the class and everything. And then they asked me, what would I do? And I on the spot was like, wow, think I'd want to be an author. Of course, so it was like the first time I ever really put it out there, but I still didn't do anything about it. It was still like 3 or 4 years from that point before I sat down to write something. And it was funny because it was that Florida story. I was down in Florida. I went for a walk. My parents have a winter home there. So I was down there, and they just put sidewalks in their neighborhood. Like, if you've been to Southwest Florida, it is just sprawl. Like, you don't walk anywhere.
No.
But they put sidewalks in. So I thought, I'm going to go out and take a walk.
Yeah.
No water, no sunblock, hour and a half out in this sun. I was delirious by the time I got back. But somewhere along that path, this story popped into my head. And I told my parents and my wife about it. And I came back, and I'm telling my staff about it. And one of them, she says to me, she goes, you know what? You're always coming in here telling us about these story ideas you've got. She goes, when are you going to stop telling us about your stupid stories and get off your ass and write one? So I did, just to spite her. And that's how I got started. So if she hadn't said that to me, and I hadn't said, well, to hell with you, I'll prove you wrong.
Right.
I might not have ever done it. But that was it. So that was the catalyst that made me write my first one. So I had never really thought this is what I would do. Yeah, I owe her a lot. And she knows it, and she never lets me forget it. But that's the relationship we have. So that's okay.
Yeah. Well, that is amazing. And I am very glad that you are out here playing with us.
I'm very glad to be here. I could talk about myself and what I'm doing all day long. So this is easy.
Yes. Well, I am not going to keep you for too much longer. However, even though it has been absolutely amazing talking to you, and I am so glad you came on here. I do have one last question for you.
Certainly.
It is a would you rather question.
Okay.
Would you rather be a noun or an adjective? And out of either, which one would you be?
Oh, God, like you want the specific word that I would be?
Yeah.
I think I would rather be an adjective.
Okay.
Because then, rather than being something on my own, I would be a word that is used to describe something, right? That I would become synonymous with this feeling, label, whatever.
Yeah.
So I think I want to be the adjective sexy. I want everybody to
Oh,
think me
yeah.
when they think sexy.
Yes.
Yes.
Like so
That
that
would be awesome.
generic.
Who wouldn't want that to be associated with them
Right.
under all circumstances? It's like,
Yeah.
damn, baby, you so Troy Young. You so Troy Young.
Now we're
I
gonna create you your own hashtag, and that's what it'll mean. Yeah.
Fair enough. Let's do that.
Yeah. Yep. That's what we will do. It's canon now, so we have to.
Fair enough. Let's make it happen.
And you think I'm joking.
Let's see where it takes us. I'm ready to ride that rocket.
Because why not?
So,
All righty then. Well, thank you so much for coming on here. This has been
thanks for having me.
amazing. And I will have you back. When is your next release?
Like I said, the third book of this series is releasing September 25th.
Okay.
My current work in progress, who knows when. I started to do some pre-sales or pre-orders.
Mhm.
And then I found myself literally scurrying at the last minute to get it into the deadline. So
Oh,
I no longer do that anymore. Not until
gotcha.
at least the first draft is finally complete.
Yeah.
So the one I'm working on now, it's called The Malign Rite.
Mhm.
As I said, it's a witch hunter in 1798 tracking down this witch that is in the Curse of the Windsor Witch, which is set in 2019. So obviously we're a long way back in time. And it just keeps getting bigger and bigger than I first intended, right? Like it's already up to 7,000 words and we're not even up to the witch yet.
Oh.
So yeah, it's been interesting. And it not only does it draw from that one thing, it also ties into the reader magnet I used for my 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 email list.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking if I ever get around to publishing the histories, I'll add the reader magnet as one of the stories in there, but I'll have to do it in such a way that the reader magnet is no more than 10% of the book so I can continue to give it away for free. Otherwise, Amazon will be mad at me.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I'll just have to, keep bloating up the others to keep that reader magnet in there. But so it's drawing from multiple stories and pulling them all together and really cementing my version of Lovecraft's Cthulhu mythos.
Mhm.
So I would suggest, so that one will probably be out, I would say, in the next 3 to 4 weeks.
Okay.
Then I got to write the third of my Gunslinger's Emancipation. That's the sci-fi one. That's next on my list. And then I've got that YA novel series that I got to get started on. So but you know what? I'll have to come in wearing a disguise if we do this, so they don't
That's
think
true.
me.
Yeah, we'll have to get you.
All right, like a fake mustache.
Mhm.
Maybe I'll wig, so it
Yeah.
looks like I have hair. Right, or we could put me in shadow and modify my voice so I talk like this.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Yeah. Isn't this the guy that said terrible things about YA? No, not me.
Oh, that was somebody else. Yeah.
Exactly.
All right. Well, keep me posted, and we will have you back.
Definitely, and we can always do the second book of the other.
Yes. All right.
All right.
Well,
thank you.
Thank you. I'll be seeing you.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.